Hi, I'm Shar Jorgenson and welcome to Inspired by Shar. Today I'm going to show you how to make a dahlia quilt. When I started researching this pattern, I found dahlias in every color imaginable, so your palette will be limitless. When you look at the quilt behind me, you will see that I have found some pretty fun fabrics to work with. When you look at the flowers in the quilt, you'll see that I was able to find some really interesting fabrics and fussy cut the petals. And what I concentrated on was getting the petals to look like they were actually folded over. And so I cut so that on some of them the tips of each of the petals would be darker, and then I highlighted the center area of the petals and then shaded into a lighter center. Then in the center, I found another neat fabric where I could fussy cut the circle for the center of the petal. Also, if you look at this flower, I've done the same thing in the gold tones. Just by moving the template around on the fabric, I was able to have a lot of fun. The outside border around the whole quilt, I also fussy cut those little petals from some really fun fabrics. And you know, when you go shopping, you will discover that you'll have all kinds of fun choosing probably batiks or tie-dyed fabrics, all kinds of things that you can cut your petals from. The blocks are a 12-inch finished block when finished, and then I have put a sashing strip which is the same color as the background of the block, so it looks like the dahlias are actually floating on a black background. The quilting on this one was free form or free motion done on a long arm machine by Sue McClose, and she has done an awesome job of quilting. She has made it look like the flowers are even more realistic. So the combination of the fabric and the quilting have really made this quilt beautiful. If you don't have a long arm machine and want to do it yourself, you could actually hand quilt your own dahlias by laying this stencil over the top. It's a realistic as well as the free motion quilting is, and I designed it to go right over the top of the flowers. The next quilt that I'm showing you is a really neat table runner, and this one showcases what you can do if you want to make single dahlias. There is just a single petal, so you have the option of making double dahlias or single dahlias, and you also have the option of making an octagon shape as this table runner is here. And the stencil that I was just showing you is the one that was used for the quilting on this particular quilt, or table runner, I'm sorry. The next one that I'm showing you is made from scraps of the 30s reproduction prints, and Judy Block made this quilt for me. And when you look at it, you'll see that she's used all of her variety of reproduction prints. And then her quilting was done with a blanket stitch over the top of each of the petals for a real country look to it. And in the corner of the 12-inch block, she has put little squares to add a little more interest to her quilt. And her sashing is just about 1.5 inches wide throughout here. The next table runner that I'm showing you is a double dahlia, and for this one I used batiks. And you'll see that I really didn't spend a lot of time fussy cutting them, but I did concentrate on getting different values of batiks for each of the dahlias. Like I told you earlier, you can find dahlias in every combination of color imaginable. The next one is a beautiful table runner also made by Judy, and this one she showcases the octagon shape, and this one happens to be a double dahlia of scraps, and it's a beautiful table runner for the summertime. Well, now I think we'll show you how to cut the dahlia, but before I show you how to cut it, I think I would like to show you what you're going to need to use to cut it out with. I have developed a set of acrylic templates for you to use, and that is really nice to have the ability to use them because they include the 1/4-inch seam allowance. They've been laser cut and computer drafted, so they're very, very accurate. The templates also are lettered with the A, B, and C and so on, so you know exactly which pieces to cut for the part of the flower that you're going to use. Also, on some of them, there's a couple of them where I've removed the ear for easy matching, and you'll see the benefit of that when I start sewing it together for you. With the templates, you get a really nice book of instruction. It is in full color from beginning to end, showing exactly what you need to do every step of the way. The illustrations in the book show you the right side as well as the wrong side, so you don't have to worry about remembering what I tell you in the class today. When you look at the templates in front of me, you'll see two that I have put fabric grips on the back side of them. And I put it on the corner of each of the templates, and that keeps them from sliding when I'm cutting. And those grips come in a package of 56, and they stay on the templates for the life of the templates. Actually, these templates will never wear out. You can use them from one generation to the next because there's no way that they will wear out. So you'll see that there are two sizes of grips, the large and the small, depending on the size of the template that you're wanting to use. The first thing that I'm going to do is show you how to cut the petals for one of the dahlias, and I'll show you what the fabric looked like before I start cutting through it. And I found a fabric that had some really interesting textures in it. Actually, probably if you didn't have something like this in mind, you would say, well, wow, what am I going to do with that fabric? But look at the varieties of colors, and by moving the templates over them, I had the ability to decide, well, I wonder which part I should put for the top of the petal or the bottom. And here might have been an interesting area that I could have chosen, because here is the light area that I want for possibly part of it, or maybe I will go into the green and get the tip of that. Actually, if I tip this one over, I might even like it a little better. There is where I think I would like to do it. So let's cut a few of those and see what we have. And I'm going to use a rotating mat underneath my template so that I can turn my work as I cut. Now that I've chose the placement for my template to get the best effect out of the flower, I will use the small rotary cutter to cut around the shape. And there is our first petal. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. See the glow through here? The tip is dark, and I've got the light up in there. We'll take one more so you can start to see how that flower will start to bloom. Let's see, I think this is what I wanted. And like I said, you're going to find all kinds of fabrics with light and dark shadings in them, and you'll be able to create your own petals. Do you see how that shows up? It's starting to create that pattern. Now to get the pattern down in here, we have one more petal, and that is template B. And I want to have a light area in here and then a dark down in here. So what I'm going to do is take this part of the leftover fabric, because you don't want to waste anything, so I'm going to creep into this area right in here and see how that one looks. Now because of the fussy cutting, I'm not really paying attention to the way the straight of grain is because I'm capturing certain parts of the fabric. Wow, look at how pretty that is because I have the light in here and the dark out here. So when this petal comes on top, you're going to see the shading. And that's how I cut all of the petals for the quilt that was behind me. And it's really nice to be able to move your template around and capture exactly the fabric that you want. And you can get out of a fabric, for instance, that looks like this, you can get many, many dahlias depending on what colors you want. And so when I cut, for example, this one, I just would keep going straight through this fabric like that. And it comes in many different colors. There's also a gold one, magenta, all different kinds of colors. Then the center of the flower, I also fussy cut for this one, and won't that one be pretty when that one gets completed. And there is a circle template that you can use to cut those, so I knew exactly how I wanted to do that. The other two shapes that are used in the petal, or in the flower I should say, are the shape that come along the outside edge like this to straighten the edge of the flower, and then there's also one that fills out the corner. Ahead of time I cut strips for those so I could show you how I cut those, and we want to have the straight of grain on the outside edge of the block. So pay attention to how you place the templates on the board for that one. The first one that I'm going to cut is template J, which is this piece right in here. And I've cut the strips the length that is needed for that piece. To cut this one, I've lined it up on the edge there. Okay. What I have done is cut the strip to accommodate the length of the piece that's needed, and then I'll turn the board so that I don't have to cut backhanded, and there's my first piece. Now the next one will butt up to that same cut, and there we go. I haven't had to waste any fabric at all. The one thing I forgot to talk about was that when I hold my cutter, I always put my pointer finger up on top of the cutter instead of like this, because then you have more control with your cutter. So make your first cut going backwards so you don't cut into the template and dull your blade. So that's how that is cut, and then you would just keep working across that strip of fabric. Each one of the blocks would use 4 of these shapes like this, so one on each side of your block. I think I mentioned it is a 12-inch finished block or square when it's done. The next one that I'm going to show you how to cut is the corner piece, and that's template D. So place that up on top of the strip again, like this, always keeping in mind that the straight of grain is this way and this way. These strips have been cut from selvage to selvage, so I know that they're on the straight of grain. Again, rocking that template backwards before you make that first cut is very helpful. Now the next template or the next piece will be cut like this. So I will crowd into that last area, so I really have very little waste. So I will go like this, and this, and this. See, there was very, very little waste there. And then turn your board, and you have just one last cut before you're done. So don't waste your fabric. Remember to close your blade when you're done. And there is the corner piece. And each time you cut for a block, you need 4 corners and 4 of these. And I forgot to mention that there are 8 petals of each of, first the A template and then 8 of the B's. So you need 8 of these going around. To prepare the center for the applique in the center of the block, like I said, I picked the specific part of the fabric that I wanted to use for that center, and around the outside edge I have hand stitched a running stitch about an 1/8 inch apart, just a long running stitch, and the stitching is about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric. You want to be really close out. Then what I did was I put a circle in the center which has the seam allowance removed from it, so it's 1/4 of an inch smaller. Actually, what I'm going to do is show you. Here is your template that I used to cut the circle. I removed the seam allowance when I made my little cardboard center, and that's now my guide that I put inside of the paper or inside of the fabric. And then I'm going to pull up this string. And when I pull on the string, see how it forms itself around that circle. Then I hold on to the tail of the thread. I take it to the ironing board and I put a nice press with the steam iron. Then I will take a little spray starch and press it again, so I have a nice crisp edge around the outside edge of that circle, and that's kind of cozy hand stitching in the end. I also have other applique techniques that I used to prepare the outside border of the quilt, and when you look at the quilt, you'll see that I have evenly distributed the same colors of the dahlias in the outside border. The first thing that I did was I prepared the stem that follows all the way around the outside border. And I give you a pattern in the book so you have easy placement of that. And it's a paper pattern that I pinned up to the quilt. I just laid it on the quilt, and then I laid my stem following that pattern. And so every 12 inches I just moved this along, and then I repeated that same pattern. That was the first thing that I put on the quilt. To prepare the stem, what I did was I sewed long strips of fabric that are cut on the bias from the fabric that I wanted to use. And then I used a fast turn tool, and I slipped it inside of that pre-sewn strip. Now keep in mind that the seam of this strip, this is the wrong side that you're looking at right now. And the strips come in many different, or the tool comes with many different sizes. So depending on how wide you want something will be determined the size fast turn that you use. I've actually got this on here a little bit snug, so I should have probably had my strip a little bit bigger, but this will work just fine. Okay, now you have this long wire thing with a little twist on the end of it. You insert that inside of the tool, and then I sneak through the tail of it and twist it so it grabs onto the fabric like that. And then I pull back through the tube and see how it's working its way through. And now I'm turning this fabric right side out, and that is my stem that I will use on the outside of my quilt for my stems for my leaves. And there you see the tails coming out. So I'm just working it through that tube. This is an awesome way to turn strips of fabric, and like I said, it comes in many different sizes. Isn't that awesome? I would do several strips so I had enough to go all the way around. And then from this single strip, I cut little pieces, and here they are hiding underneath. So I have for the stem. So the first thing you put on is your long travel stem, and then I put off little things like this. The next thing we're going to do is make the little flowers that are scattered throughout the quilt. First of all, I want to tell you that I give you all of the patterns in the book in great detail, and then I trace through I use a heat-resistant Templar, and I trace. These two are transparent so that you can place them over the shapes in the book and get the right pattern. And let me show you what that looks like. Here are your shapes that you get in the book. And then I traced, as you can see, this is transparent. So I traced onto the plastic, and then with a scissor or an X-Acto knife, I cut them out. Then I take these and move them over the fabric to get the texture that I wanted. After you have found the texture that you wanted, and by the way, the tracing of the pattern is done from the wrong side of the fabric. Now here you see the shape of a leaf. And I have pinned these two fabrics right sides together, and this is just a piece of muslin on the back side. As you can see, I've just cut a scrap of muslin. You place them right sides together, and then I thread my machine with a water-soluble thread on either the top or the bottom. It doesn't matter which one you use it on. And then in the bobbin, for example, you just put your everyday sewing thread in there. And I shorten the stitch length to probably a 1.5, and I stitch around the shape. And when I get to the points, then I shorten the stitch length even shorter. After you have sewn this, I trim it away to 1/8 of an inch around the outside edge. Then on the back side, I'm going to clip an opening so I can turn it inside out. Here is one of the leaves turned inside out, and this is the opening that I turned it with. Then I pressed it with the iron. Next thing you do is you spray it with either water or spray starch and let it sit on the ironing board for probably 2-3 minutes and let that water-soluble thread dissolve. After you think it's dissolved, press it again so you have yet a crisper edge, and that water-soluble thread is a little starchy, so it even adds to the crispness. And then you just peel it apart, and that's your perfect applique. And when you're done, this is what you have in the end, is a beautiful turned applique, and you don't have to worry about needle turn. I just love this technique. I use it in all of my applique. This would be also an option for the center circle. If you wanted to just do that same technique, you could do it the same way. This is just two different ways of doing it. Then after I have all of the pieces, for example, made, and here you have a little combination of a little bud, I guess, and then the little leaf on the bottom. And then I audition in the quilt, and here I have a gold one, a pink one, and now let's say we have all of our flowers made. I will take it to the quilt, and I would evenly distribute. So here I have a a pink one here, and then over here a gold one. And I evenly distributed the colors throughout the quilt, so I had them placed the way I wanted them. And then I pinned them down. Well, let's see, here we had a pink one. I would pin them down, and this is great TV work when you're sitting in the evening and relaxing. And the flower would look like this when it's turned inside out. So everything is prepared. And then when you're doing the applique, I like to use the shorter pins, the little applique pins. They're not quite so clumsy. Oh, and then in the corners, you'll see that on the flowers, there's a different color in each corner. You have a blue one down here, you have pink ones and yellow ones. And in the book, I give you not only the shapes, but I tell you the order in which you put them into your quilt. So you put the leaves down first, then you put this petal down, all the twos go second, and then the last one over the top. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I really enjoy doing it that way, and I like to share it with you. It's always fun to pass on those new tips. Now we're ready to put the whole dahlia block together.
Inspired by Shar is sponsored by Brother. Featured in Shar's show is the Quattro, Creativity times 4. Embroidery, sewing, quilting, and crafting. The Quattro 6000D brings you 100 brilliant, unprecedented, new and improved features. The cabinetry used in this show is by Tracy's Tables, offering a complete line of tables, carts, and shelves custom-made to fit your specific needs. Visit them at tracystables.com. Olfa. There's an Olfa tool for every job. Rowenta. Irons for every need. So Unique. Manufacturers of innovative products for sewing, quilting, and beading.